What's going on, guys? In this video I want to go over the difference between iterables and iterators. So we'll go over exactly what iterables and iterators are, and I'll explain the difference between both of them. Alright, so first let's go over exactly what an iterable is. Okay, iterable equals lists, strings, tuples, files, etc. I want you guys to pay attention to the difference between an iterable and an iterator. Remember, we're using two different words and they sound very similar, so I just want you guys to keep in mind when we're speaking about an iterable and when we're speaking about an iterator. Alright, so an iterable is an object that can be iterated over. So lists, strings, tuples, files, etc. are objects that can be iterated over. And what I mean by iteration or iterated over is something like in the for loop. So for I in xxxxx, do this. So if you're the xxxxx part, the part on the right of the expression, then you're an iterable. You can be iterated over. During iteration, what an iterable, so something that can be iterated over, is capable of doing is it's capable of creating an iterator to do the iteration on it. So an iterable is capable of creating its own iterator, and this created iterator is actually going to do the iteration on itself or on the iterable. So a list, so for example, a list is capable of creating an iterator, and that iterator is going to do the iteration on that list itself. Okay, so that's a key point you want to remember. To be an iterable, you need to be able to create your own iterator. So that's the next point. To be an iterable, you need to be able to create your own iterator. Now, iterables have a built-in iter method. So if you look at the dir of iterables, so something like dir of list, you'll see, here we go. This is a built-in iter method that it can use to create an iterator. So this built-in method is used to create an iterator. All right. There we go. Alright, just in case you guys didn't get a close look, this is the method used to create an iterator. And all iterables have this built-in method. So now let's go over exactly what an iterator is. An iterator is an object created from calling the iter method. So earlier we had said iterables such as list, files, strings, they all have this capability of, they all have this built-in iter method. So they're able to call this iter method, and when they call this iter method, they're able to create an iterator. So they're creating iterator using this iter method. This object that's created from calling this iter method is an iterator. Okay, so what exactly does an iterator, what are the characteristics of an iterator? What exactly does an iterator do? So an iterator has the ability to go through each element in an iterable one by one. So they have the ability to iterate, and they utilize the next method. So this is the next method that iterators have. An iterator must have the next method. That is sort of their trademark. So an iterator can go through each element of an iterable using the next method. I want to show you guys exactly what happens behind the loops. I want to show you what happens behind the hood when we use a for statement. So remember, a for is a built-in function in Python. So I created a simple example. My list here is 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have for I in my list. Okay, for I in my list, print I. So as you can see, it's iterating through each of these elements. So in the background, what's actually happening when we call the for function is a couple of things. There's actually multiple things that's happening. So first, the for function is actually, it's going to my list, it's looking in my list, and it's pulling out, it's calling the iter function. So it's actually calling this function, the iter function, and creating an iterator. So the for statement will look inside my list and see this iter statement, and then call this iter statement on my list. So pretty much creating an iterator that's based on this iterable. And then the next thing it'll do is it'll call the next method. It'll continuously call the next method until we get some sort of exception and the list is exhausted. So it'll continue calling the next method, next method, next method, next method, next method, until we exhaust the list, my list. So that's why we're able to get each element of a list when we use a for loop. So this I is essentially the next value. This I is essentially the value we get when we call the next method. So that's why something like for I in 3, remember 3 doesn't have print I. So something like for I in 3, print I is not going to work because an integer doesn't have an iter method. So it's going to look inside this 3 and see if it has an iter method. See, int object is not iterable. So this 3 doesn't have the iter method. It doesn't have the ability to create, the inherent ability to create an iterator. That's why we can't iterate through it. Hopefully that clears up the difference between an iterator and an iterable. It's confusing, especially in Python, the way things are set up. Yeah, so that's it for this video. Also, always leave comments and let me know what you guys like and what you guys would like to see. So that's it for this video. I will see you guys next time.